I'm here today with Graeme Nuttall. He's a partner at Field Fisher Waterhouse and an expert in employee ownership. He's worked with many businesses in the UK to implement employee ownership and has recently been working with the UK government in an advisory role. He's the author of Sharing Success, the Nuttall Review on Employee Share Ownership that was recently launched. So Graeme, what do you see as the key barriers to employee ownership in the UK?
In the UK there are three barriers to employee ownership. The first is a lack of awareness of the concept of employee ownership. The second is a lack of resources to support employee ownership. And thirdly, the complexity or the perception of complexity in employee ownership arrangements. These are the disadvantages that I've identified through my professional career. What was fascinating when putting the review together was that this was everyone else's experience. These are the three obstacles. If we want to promote employee ownership in the UK, we're going to have to raise awareness, increase resources and reduce the complexity around employee ownership.
Graeme, what are the essential elements to successful employee ownership in your opinion?
There are different employee ownership models at work in the UK. Research suggests there are three key ingredients, whatever the legal form of the employee ownership. The first is financial participation in the broadest sense, and I mean at an individual level. An employee needs to feel they're getting something out of the employee ownership model that they wouldn't get in another business model. In the early days this may just be extra job security. It may be the prospect of additional financial reward further down the line. The second ingredient is one of individual voice. It's important that the employee feels that they have a say individually in how this business is run, and so there are the appropriate engagement mechanisms in place. Thirdly, and this is often the ingredient that's underappreciated, it's important to have a collective voice. Employees as a group need to feel that they have a meaningful stake in that business and a real sense of the direction of that business. There are other characteristics. Typically one sees a real sense of purpose or an ethos behind an employee-owned business, and similarly one sees a fairness in pay rewards and perhaps a great contribution to the local community. But as I say, it's those three individual factors that I see as the key ingredients: financial participation at an individual level, individual voice and collective voice.
What connection do you think there is between employee engagement and employee ownership?
The two are interlinked. We have failed in this country to fully appreciate that. It seems to me there's been a tendency among those interested in promoting employee engagement in all businesses to shy away from looking at the employee ownership business model. And for those involved in the employee ownership world, there's been a tendency to focus on defining employee ownership by looking at legal structures. This is why I made a conscious effort in the Nuttall Review to pull the two together. It seems to me you can't have employee ownership unless there is a significant and meaningful employee stake in the business, which underpins organisational structures that drive employee engagement. You need the two elements.
How important is employee ownership in your opinion to assist a company with succession planning, or alternatively to provide a rescue solution for an ailing company?
Employee ownership is great throughout the life cycle of a business, but you're absolutely right to focus on, in particular, succession planning. Employee ownership is a neat succession solution. Advisors will typically refer to a management buyout, a trade sale, or listing a company, or perhaps an orderly winding down of a business as the complete list of exit solutions. Employee ownership has got to be considered. There are a lot of owners of businesses who find none of those alternatives attractive. Typically they will have built up an independent, successful business with a distinctive identity of its own and perhaps one rooted in the local community. For them, none of these are attractive. Why sell to a lifelong competitor? Why see something you've built up dissipated? Why lose your independence? So it's vital that employee ownership gets considered, and there are a lot of practical advantages as well. Key one is timing. You can choose when you allow your employees to succeed to your business. You're not dictated to by market forces or by what private equity or a competitor's business plan might say. You also mentioned rescue situations. Clearly one has to be very careful to identify that there is essentially a viable business. But again, employee ownership should be considered as a possible rescue situation. Often it's the employees who know best. They will know whether there's a viable business or not. And it may be that they're prepared to accept changes in terms and conditions, or perhaps invest redundancy money in making a business succeed and survive. I have seen employee ownership promoted heavily as a business rescue solution in some areas of the country, and where this has been done, actually the success record of those businesses is impressive.
Can employee ownership drive productivity and innovation?
The research shows that employee ownership is a winning combination. It combines improved business outcomes with a greater employee well-being. When preparing the Nuttall review, we looked again at the research and identified several strong themes, and two of those were increased productivity and driving innovation. The research shows that there is a strong correlation between increased productivity and employee ownership. Possibly it's at its strongest in particular types of company. A study conducted by the Cass Business School showed that there was much greater productivity in companies with under 75 employees compared with their non-employee owned counterparts. Similarly, when one looks at driving innovation, you could always do with a bit more research, but again there seem to be strong connections. It's probably the long-term focus of employee-owned businesses that particularly supports innovation. Ideas have time to grow and there's the support for them. Also, when one looks at employee engagement, again, I think there's a strong correlation between businesses that have high levels of employee engagement and driving innovation.
How important do you think employee ownership is for small to medium-sized enterprises and also for start-up companies?
Growing the UK economy is vital. I think this is why the government has got behind the employee ownership initiative in the UK, why employee ownership is now a separate policy item for the government. And at the heart of growing the economy are startups, are encouraging the growth of small and medium-sized enterprises. So yes, employee ownership has a tremendous role to play. Again, I think a failing we've had over recent years, actually probably recent decades, is to be complacent in the type of business model that we adopt. In my professional practice, I see listed companies that should not be listed. I see charities that shouldn't be charities. We just have to work harder to ensure that each business has the right business model at the right stage of growth. And I believe that employee ownership is particularly suited towards small, medium-sized enterprises and encouraging growth in them, and also as a start-up model.
In terms of what's happening in the UK, what application, in your opinion, does that have globally or in Australia, for example?
The Nuttall review is very much a review focused at the UK economy and driving employee ownership into the mainstream of the UK economy. I've made 28 recommendations. Some of those are specific to the UK, changes to UK company law, trust law, employment law. But the themes are international. The benefits of employee ownership, as shown by the research, apply internationally. The success stories that we can point to in the UK in businesses of all sorts, in all sectors, these are international case studies. And what can be achieved through the role of politics, through government taking a keen interest in a policy area, again, has lessons internationally. There's much that can be learned. internationally from the Nuttall Review.
And finally, Graeme, what advice would you give to Australia in any reform process?
I would ask you to look at the Nuttall Review and consider it a checklist. There are some things that we already have well established in the UK that help promote employee ownership. Maybe you've not covered those as well in Australia. The report also draws out areas where we need to improve things significantly in the UK. Again, you may be ahead of the game in some of those in Australia, so I'd encourage you to use it as a checklist. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas reflected in the review. And really, the review shows what can be achieved if you get that powerful combination of government support, sector enthusiasm and wider business interest.
Thank you so much for talking to us today, Graeme. It's been fantastic to hear all of your views in relation to employee ownership and sharing those with our viewers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity for me to put these views on record, and thank you for listening.